called to order. As a courtesy to others, please silence your cell phones or turn them off like I'm doing during the meeting and engage in conversations outside the chambers. If you're here to speak under public comments on a particular item on the agenda, please fill out a request to speak card and turn it into the city clerk. The cards are located near the doors at the back of the chambers, and I've got 2 cards here. If anybody else would like to speak during the public comment period, please fill out a card. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Spriggs?
Here.
Councilmember Patton?
Here.
Councilmember West?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bragg?
Here.
Mayor Dedina?
Here. Are there any agenda changes?
No.
Okay. And, didn't do the Pledge of Allegiance, sorry, get that. Okay, and now we have the Fleet Reserve Association with Sergio Frost and Jack Van Zandt to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much, and thanks to the Fleet Reserve for all that you do for our community. Thanks. Very well. And now we start the evening with announcements from council members, starting with Councilmember Spriggs.
Good evening, everyone. It seems like it's been forever since we had our last meeting. Wasn't it about like 6 weeks ago or something?
4.
4?
It just seems like
Time flies, I guess, when you're having fun. Well, a lot has happened, and I know a lot of the other council members are going to want to, speak to the wonderful activities in the community that we've just had lately. To me, the highlights, and there's so many things we could highlight, were the opening of Grocery Outlet, which was really fantastic, and I've already spent a couple $100 worth of groceries there. I didn't intend to. You just kind of walk in and you know how it happens, and don't go there hungry. Obviously, for those of you who were at the Sun and Sea Festival, it was a huge hit this year. I think it was better than ever, especially for the families and the kids. And for those who like music, the bands were excellent also. 2 weeks ago, I was privileged to fulfill my first meeting as a member of the leadership committee for the League of California Cities Coastal Cities Issues Group, which met in Northern California in Monterey. And this is a group of 6 elected officials and their city managers that are representing each of the 6 districts for the Coastal Commission. And I was lucky enough to be appointed, and Andy Hall is our key support person, our city manager, to the San Diego region representative to that commission, or to that leadership group. And that group sets the sort of agenda for the Coastal Cities Issues Group, which is composed of about 48 or 49 coastal cities in California, all addressing in various ways, shapes, and forms the kinds of things that we're dealing with in Imperial Beach. We happen to be at the epicenter of all kinds of issues affecting coastal cities. Most other coastal cities have some portion of the issues that we're dealing with. So we automatically sort of become a poster child, kind of a leadership position on so many of the issues that we are taking the lead on. It was an organizing meeting, and we will be having further meetings to sort of set what the League's priorities should be regarding state legislation. But clearly, the number one concern is that every city has is that the Coastal Commission itself not overstretch its jurisdiction to impose a one-size-fits-all set of solutions on cities that are in the coastal zone. This really applies to us. There's a related thing that's going on right now, and I'll report more on this later. It's very important, and that's the sea level rise guidelines that operate in the state of California. are being revised. And the final version it should be available for comment later this summer, and should go into effect around January of 2018. But at the same time, we are working on our own sea level rise planning with respect to a local coastal program amendment. And the number one concern that I have is that we don't get caught between the existing guidelines that we're operating under right now and the new ones that are yet to be released for public comment and yet to be finalized. So we'll stay tuned on that issue. The last thing I wanted to mention is I had the opportunity to visit Scripps Institution of Oceanography a couple weeks ago, and I spent the morning with their plume tracking team. They have an outstanding group of scientists that specialize in looking at the plumes generated by various outfalls, including the Tijuana River and the South Bay Ocean outfall. And they have a lot of data and a lot of capability that may be of great value to us as we look at how those incidents are affecting, our city. So those are all I have to report on right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Councilmember Spriggs. Councilmember Patton.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot going on the past 4 weeks. Of course, the Sun and Sea Festival, and thanks to Ed's wife, Leah, and friend Shirley, who were the coordinators. A lot of volunteers, public safety did their job. Excellent. And some great sandcastles. So that was a great event. I was in 2 parades that day. One, I was dressed as a pirate. The other, there was a lot of rainbows. I volunteered later that day for 2.5 hours parking cars at Mar Vista for the swim and water polo team. That was rewarding. They made a lot of money for their thing, for their events. Baskin Robbins had their soft serve opening last week, and their grand opening is going to be this Saturday. $1.31 scoops. That's all I care about. We're on $1.31 scoops. I don't know what time, but we could find out. Thanks to Kiwanis Club, they did a city's appreciation lunch yesterday for all the city employees here in Imperial Beach that could make it. They had prizes, and that was a great event. Also, this Saturday and Sunday, Kiwanis are doing a Stuff the Bus at the local Walmart down the road here from 8:30 to 3, where they're going to stuff the bus full of school supplies. So I'm going to try to make it. And it's not a Volkswagen bus. I think it's a school bus. So I think that's a good deal. Today, myself and the mayor went to South Bay Union School District's opening celebration they did with all the teachers. And they were talking about coding. And there's a great website called code.org. Get a chance, check that out. And no matter what you do, you're doing something with technology, whether you're cooking, or whether you're driving a bus, whether you're doing architecture. And we need to make sure that our kids in education right now are really getting that, because if they don't get it, guess what? There's a lot of people from other countries that are getting it. So I think we need to stay on top of that. And my final one is on July 26th at our new library across the street. At 6 p.m. there's going to be a chili cook-off, and I'm entered in it. And I got to tell you, you got to come try my chili. Not only my chili, but the presentation of my chili is going to be unlike anything you've ever seen in your life. I'm just saying. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. West.
Well, I'm excited just to see it right now. I want to thank I had a great weekend with all the council from all the events that we had, from Sun and Sea and Pride. I went away from the entire weekend feeling a lot. Our city's got some great people, and I am happy to be part of it. But yeah, like you said, there are lots of events that are happening. I think one of my I supported the underserved vets with pets, Pet Food Drive, and about 200 of homeless vets came out with their pets to try to get some food, and we had a great turnout with all those vets coming away with some food for their dogs, and it was a great event held at Balboa Park, and I've actually got some confirmation that when we open up our dog park that they'll come down here and do it for us as well, so I'm pretty excited about that. then I also participated in a movie night. I saw some of you there at Luigi's Pizza, when it was with our South Bay Clean Water movement. They had a great turnout with a bunch of their families there, coming to watch a movie and really talk about our clean water movement that's happening in Imperial Beach and all the things. And Baron, it was good to see you at the South Bay Clean Water movement too. So, and then on the 4th of July parade, obviously the bicycle parade was an amazing success, and it was great to see everybody there. And they roped me into being the MC for it, and I had a great time. And the Girl Scouts were fabulous, and it was a perfect event. And then we also don't want to forget the ribbon cutting at Jersey Mike's, where I got to see Councilmember Spriggs, the mayor, and everybody there. And it was a great grand opening. I think we're all really excited about our 9th and Palm. It's awesome, to say the least. Coming up, 22nd, United Methodist Church it's their 69th anniversary, and they're holding a picnic, which starts at noon at their place. They're going to be holding a picnic, and they're actually cultivating a lot of the food out of their garden. So I highly recommend people get out there to see it. And they've done their garden is amazing, and the Knox family has done amazing putting it together. Don't want to forget about Surf Dog coming up on the 29th, which is obviously a fantastic event for our community. And then on August 5th is the 4th Clean Cities Initiative that we're doing. We'll be focusing on the community up off 13th Street at the Bicycle Village. So please come out. We're going to be from 10 to noon. I Love a Clean San Diego, SDG&E, and a lot of really motivated people picking up that area on 13th Street. So I'm super excited about it, and thank you again.
Thanks. Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you. I did bring the trophy that
awesome.
the City Council Float won. We were honored to win the Scallywags Award.
That's great.
But our true thanks goes to the family of Dave Clark, who lives on Spruce Street, and that entire neighborhood worked for about a week to provide the City Council with a float. So I'm hoping that there will be an opportunity where we can thank them publicly and share this award with them, because it was their efforts that got us there. It was a great, we just had a great time. And Councilmember Patton, I'm not sure about your chili cook-off. I am a past award-winning chili competitor. One of my colleagues on the team is out there in the audience. She can attest. We've won best booth, best chili. I think we won best costume. So if we enter you have some tough competition there. Again, and the community loves 9th and Palm. You can go to that shopping center anytime, night or day, and it takes a long time to shop there because you run into everybody you know. So that has been a huge home run for this community. The mayor's breakfast was absolutely phenomenal. That event has changed, and it has really embraced, I think, your leadership, Mayor. The community is just fallen in love all over again with that event. I do publicly want to thank our historical society. I don't know if you got a chance to go over there. They did have pictures of every past mayor in the city of Imperial Beach. So that was wonderful to see. And one of the things that always happens when that booth is out in the public is somebody will walk up and say, I have a picture you need. I have a program you need. So the collection of our memorabilia for the Historical Society is just growing by leaps and bounds. So thank all of you for donating to that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And all the above for all the events. Shopping center, businesses that have opened, grocery outlet, which has made my life much better. I can't tell you how nice it is to ride my bike to the grocery store 2 blocks from my house. Starbucks, that's packed. Jersey Mike's, awesome. Baskin & Robbins. Their grand opening is this Saturday from 12 to 4, and I think the ribbon cutting is actually at noon. Pretty sure. Wine? Oh, okay, I need to correct my calendar. T-Mobile is open as well. They're active on Twitter. That's a really, really great project. And the sign of success is that literally the moment it was open, it was packed. They had the strongest opening of any grocery outlet in the company's history. Starbucks is doing 3 times the business that they thought they would, right? So it's just proof that this community had pent-up demand for having high-quality food shopping venues, and so it's filling that demand. And I think grocery outlet is a perfect vendor or supermarket for our community, and more importantly, they're very community-minded. They're charitable, they're giving back, and so is Jersey Mike, so that's great. This Friday and Saturday, the City of Imperial Beach, along with the City of Coronado and the State of California, is sponsoring the California Surf Lifesaving Association Championship, California Surf Lifesaving Championship at Silver Strand State Beach. That'll be Saturday with lifeguards from all over the state. We'll compete in all kinds of fun events. I'll be part of the IB team, so that should be fun, competing in the old guys category. And then on Friday, they have the Junior Lifeguard State Championship, and you get junior lifeguards literally from all over the state. Should be about 700 of them there. Councilmember Pat and I will be there to hopefully proclaim it to be Junior Lifeguard Day and give that proclamation. And I'm really proud of the fact that the City of IB has been a big sponsor of that event. And thanks, Councilmember Patton, for stepping up and helping them out. In terms of water quality stuff, yesterday, Chris Helmer and I met with the top officials in California for the US EPA. I'd love to tell you that they have a lot of direction and funding to move forward to help us, but the fact is they don't. They're not really any clear leadership in Washington, no clear leadership in Congress to actually fund anything on the border that's of concern to us. Luckily, our congressional delegation, including and Congress people from around the border, have been lobbying Congress to make sure that there is funding in the budget for helping fix some of our sewage problems. But apparently the House of Representatives didn't get that message, and they think it'll be up to the Senate to make sure that funding's there. So the other clear thing is that it's not clear they're getting any clear direction at all from the director of the EPA. So that's a problem for us. They haven't had a regional director at all. They're not clear who that will be. So it was a little bit of a reality check for us on some of the work that we need to do to make sure that we get the infrastructure that we need, and we work to solve this problem. But it's going to take a lot of work, and it's very clear that the leadership's come from the City of IB. It's not a good sign when the US EPA is asking the City of Imperial Beach for feedback on how to design retention basins and stormwater infrastructure. Last week I did meet with a really important group of people in Tijuana. That's a Smart Border Coalition. That's a coalition of probably some of the highest level private sector leaders in San Diego and Tijuana that work on both sides of the border, and had a very clear message for those folks, probably some of the most influential business people in Tijuana, and that is, we need help. When we drown in sewage, so does your city. You can't continue to grow economically without helping us fix the problem. So they've committed to helping us reach more to the Mexican federal government. But same thing, it's just a little disheartening to see the City of Imperial Beach taking leadership in Tijuana on a problem to fix their infrastructure. So we've got to continue, and that's why this council will be acting as aggressively as possible, exploring all our options and making sure that we hold everyone accountable to fix this problem that's impacting all of us. And then I just want to thank everybody, city staff, our lifeguards, Women's Club, the Job Corps, all our sponsors for an amazing breakfast and paddle and swim. We had over 100 people. Ed, how many people on the walk? About 100? Mm-hmm. Over 100 people on the run walk, 3K run walk. Over 220 in the swim paddle. That's a record. It was like 130 last year, I think, 150 last year. So that's great. A huge contingent from the U.S. Navy, which was absolutely awesome. All our junior lifeguards, most of the junior lifeguards came out. I want to shout out to our lifeguards. The surf, we were a little worried about surf conditions. It was still pretty gnarly. It was 2 to 4 feet, but with a super strong longshore current and a pretty little strong brisk northwest wind. So it was a tough swim. The water was a little colder, and now it's 72, which is crazy. So, but not a single rescue, not a single incident. Our lifeguards acted like the experts they are. So thank you, Captain Stabenow. Please let all you guys know, and men and women know, that they did a great job, and we appreciate it. Yeah, so let's give them a round. I was up with Lieutenant Magana, the sheriffs, and his colleagues up at the command center at the Dempsey Center on Saturday afternoon, and as I understand, there weren't that many problems. I think there were a few drunks, which is good, so that was really good to see that you could have all those folks assemble and have a good time. That's really important to have a safe and secure family environment. And then finally, we did thanks to Ed Villa for organizing our first ever presence at Pride, the Pride Parade. If you haven't been to Pride, and we were at parade, from our parade to their parade and back to IB, but 200,000 people, and the love for Imperial Beach was really impressive. People shouting out IB, IB, and all the hugging that was going on. different council members, me and Councilmember West and Patton, people from IB that were there, and really good to see the Sheriff Bill Gore, and hung out with San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulkner and Todd Gloria. So really impressive event, and it was really great to have IB there and to see the love that people have for Imperial Beach. So that's
Bear,
it.
don't be shy. They all wanted to see you, not us.
No. It's anyway, great.
Well, Mayor, from what I understand, they saw more of Councilman West than they saw the rest of you. But and it sounds like Councilwoman Bragg didn't drop the mic, but she dropped the beans and the chili powder on you. So it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. But I wanted to join Councilman Patton in thanking the Kiwanis Club and the Boys and Girls Club for hosting the Employees Appreciation Lunch. That was really nice. And they do that for us every year. They feed the entire employee staff, and it was really nice. We really appreciate that. And then I think that our Natural Resources Director has a couple of things that he wants to run by the City Council.
Perfect, come on up.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to take this opportunity to share with you a recent award that we received from American Public Works Association. It's Project of the Year for the recently completed alley project. And the reason why this is so important is because this week we started construction on the remaining alleys in our city. We're starting over in Bayside Elementary School.
Yes.
And we're eventually going to get to your 7-Eleven. That's really me. This is a win for the alleys. It's a win for the city. It's a win for our residents. We're super excited about starting the alley project. So hopefully by this fall, this project will be completed and we're going to have brand new alleys throughout our city. So congratulations.
Let's give these guys a round of applause. And just so you know, everybody, those alleys, not only they improve the quality of life of residents who've waited for some of them decades for alleys, those are permeable concrete, so it reduces stormwater runoff. So it's a brilliant project and has a significant contribution to improving the quality of life of our residents. Thank you, Mr. Helmer, and the entire Public Works staff. Now we have public speaker slips. Really nice. We have Jack Van Zandt.
Thank you, Mayor, Honorable Mayor, City Council members. It's good to be with you this evening. And I'm speaking as Jack Van Zandt, private citizen. My time at the Chamber of Commerce is up. So, one last thing. Tonight, I would like to talk to you a little bit about, the distinguished leadership that the council and the city has established in the state and for all coastal communities on any coastline. However, one of the things that doesn't enhance the leadership position is this current litigation with the 34 oil companies, and I know that it's tagged in with Marin County and San Mateo. I just got back from Marin County, so I get it. Anytime I don't understand something, I remember, oh yeah, that's what it was about. However, I'm not an attorney, so I can't advise you, but I have seen every episode of Boston Legal. Frivolity is one of the words that comes to the fore of my mind with this litigation. And the reason I say that is, this is a bad thing. Litigation like this is bad for families. It's bad because it raises costs of doing business. It raises costs in society. And, I think that you have to remember that. And if I was an attorney, which I'm not, and I brought a lawsuit like this, I'd be very wary of sanctions because you're suing for something that hadn't even happened. I mean, you're suing for something that may not even happen. So I would just like to say, and in the spirit of true partnership for success for the city and for coastal communities everywhere, is there something else that we can spend our time and resources on besides litigation? Litigation like this is almost violence. It really is. Like I say, all litigation raises the cost of living. And for our town, which is a town of hard-working families who are trying to make it, I think that this is something that we really don't need. There are other things that we can do besides put time and energy and resources into this. And that's my only comment. And thank you very much. Oh, by the way, we're taking that sales tax revenue from the gas stations and then getting ready to open another gas station. If you leave here and you get in a vehicle of any type and you go home and you turn on the lights, and you might wash a load of clothes, you might watch TV, you might charge your cell phone. That's the petroleum industry there, okay? So we're suing them for something that hadn't happened yet. Everybody knows that fossil fuels is evil, and I see my time's up. Even J. Paul Getty knew that. But there's other things that we can do besides litigation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dantown. Mr. Short.
Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, I'd like to thank you for your service to this city. My wife and I have been residents here for 11 years, and we really enjoy living here in the community. At the urging of my neighbors, I agreed to come here and recite a letter, and 11 of them have signed it. But it's, Dear City Council, we, the undersigned, are concerned residents of the 100 and 200 blocks of Cala Avenue and 600 block of Seacoast Boulevard. We are writing because of the noise and invasion of privacy from the patrons of the CrossFit business located at 645 Silver Strand Boulevard. Exercises from that gym have been heard and observed early in the morning at 6:21 a.m., running east and west on Cala Avenue and north and south on the 600 block of Seacoast, being coached by an instructor from the gym on a bicycle. Periodically, the exercisers have been heard dropping noisy kettlebell weights on the sidewalks. Such activity often results in a crescendo of dogs barking up and down Cala Avenue early in the morning. We have small children playing in the front yards of Cala Avenue and are worried about the repetitious presence of complete strangers at all hours of the day and night. We wish the best for the success of any business located in Imperial Beach's commercial zone, but are requesting that this business be a good neighbor and respect our needs for peace and privacy in our own residences. We would like to suggest the win-win solution. The gym could encourage their patrons to use the commercial corridors of Silver Strand Boulevard and Palm Avenue for their cardiovascular activities, thereby respecting the residential zones. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Short. Did we get a copy of the letter? Did we have
sir.
it? Great. We really appreciate you coming in. And just so you know, and for the members of the public, we're not allowed to, we can't respond when you give public comment, but I know there'll be a follow-up, so thank you so much. That's one of my favorite streets, so anyway, I know about everybody on it, so thanks for coming in from a very cool street. And now we have no more public comment, is that correct? Okay. Now we have presentations 1.1 to 1.2 on the County of San Diego's Vector Control Program. And Mr. Chris Conlon, supervising vector ecologist for the County of San Diego Vector Control Program, will give this presentation. Thank you so much for being here and all the great work you do. We appreciate it.
No, thank you very much for having me. I know my time kind of limited here, so I'll see what I can do about getting through this real quick. So I'll give you a quick update today on what's going on with mosquitoes around the county and particularly Imperial Beach as well. So the vector control program, first thing we always ask is, what is a vector? And it's basically any animal or organism that can transmit a disease. And for vector control, it's specifically those that can transmit diseases to humans. So that's a big concern. The more common vectors are things like mosquitoes, ticks, fleas, flies, rats, and mice, things like that. So the vector control program is here to promote public health and welfare. We're responsible for doing things like educating the public on various aspects of vector control, as well as some of the control that's associated with that, like especially when it comes to mosquitoes. The vector control program is basically divided into 4 sections. We have the surveillance section, which does all the monitoring and the sample gathering. We have the control section, which does the complaint response and the actual application of insecticides to kill the mosquitoes. We also have the outreach portion, which is responsible for educating the public on methods that they can use to protect themselves and do things in their yards to promote better circumstances so they don't have vector situations in their own yards. And then we have our own in-house lab, which is really great because it provides rapid in-house testing for all those samples that we bring in and allows us to take a faster response to things. So basically here in San Diego, we've got about 24 species of native mosquitoes. And of those, there's about maybe 10 or 12 or so that are more common, and maybe only 5 or 6 of those that are really an issue when it comes to transmission of disease. Unfortunately, we've got a couple new ones in town too, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. But only the female mosquitoes actually bite, and the reason for that is because those female mosquitoes actually need the protein in that blood meal in order to ripen a batch of eggs. So every time that mosquito wants to lay a batch of eggs, it's got to take another blood meal, and every time it does that, it can result in literally hundreds of eggs that mosquito can then lay. And it doesn't take much water for them to be able to find a place to put those eggs down and those larvae to mature. A half an inch is plenty. So even little shallow pools can be enough to produce quite a few mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, just to kind of familiar with them, get you a little familiar with them here, they have basically 4 life stages. You have the adult, which lays the eggs. The eggs are usually laid either on the water or very near adjacent to it on the aquatic vegetation or in depressions that may then later flood. Those eggs then hatch into the larval stage. The larva stage then molts to the pupa, and then out comes the adult, and we start things all over again. And generally, when in vector control, we try to do most of our focused efforts on controlling the larval stage because it's contained in the water, and we have a better shot at getting to it there. So, when it comes to the diseases that we're looking at here, of all you may have heard in the news about Zika and all these other things, you're still, if you're going to get a vector-borne disease here, the most likely one you're going to catch is West Nile virus. And even that's pretty darn rare. We don't get that many cases every year. But there's also still things that show up from time to time, like Western equine encephalitis, malaria, and then, of course, now with this new introduced mosquito, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, things like dengue or Zika or chikungunya, these other more tropically associated diseases, which we hadn't had to worry about until very recently. So I'm going to talk about the new guy in town. That's the new invasive Aedes mosquito. This thing showed up in about the late fall of 2014, and unfortunately it spread quite rapidly. And now, if you live along the Interstate 8 corridor and southward, there's a pretty good chance you're dealing with it. We've even picked them up here in Imperial Beach, so we know they're around. The other one that's been found here too is another mosquito called Aedes albopictus, or the Asian tiger mosquito. We've only found this in 2 locations in the county. It doesn't appear to be really establishing very well here, which is good because its other brother, the Aedes aegypti, is doing really well. But the Aedes albopictus mosquito actually is doing very well just to the north of us in Los Angeles and Orange counties and spreading up there. So we are concerned that with time that could become a resident here as well. So when it comes to mosquito control, generally most of that mosquito control is done by ground application. So crews will go out and treat most of these places by hand, and they can get to a lot of that stuff either in vehicles or by foot. For places that are more difficult to access, like large lagoons or heavily vegetated, bodies of water, we have aerial applications that we do. And in fact, our helicopter is finishing up today after doing a countywide application in all of the locations that we can't easily get to by foot, and actually it should be finishing up in the next hopefully 30 minutes. It's a long day when we got up there with the helicopter. So, and then for the relatively new to the program now is when we have a situation where there's a threat of illness and we really can't go in and control the larvae because it would take too long for that process to follow through, we have to do what we call an ultra low volume application. And that's where we'll either go in with a truck mounted spray, and these are specifically targeted for adult mosquitoes. And for the first time last year, we actually had to do this. We had a West Nile hotspot develop up in the Del Mar area by Penasquitos Lagoon. And we had to do a truck-mounted fogging in the wee hours of the morning to go out there and try to kill the mosquitoes and reduce the threat of disease. And now when we have this new invasive mosquito in town, whenever we have a traveler that comes back and it looks like they were infected with Zika virus or dengue or one of these tropical illnesses that these mosquitoes transmit, and it looks like they may have been potentially infective to those mosquitoes while here locally, we have to do a quick investigation. And if we find that this person returns sick and there was actually these invasive mosquitoes found in their, on or adjacent to their property, then that will trigger what we have to do a very limited spray event where we go in within about 150 yards of the residence and try to kill off as many of these adult mosquitoes in the vicinity of where this person lives, just to try to reduce that threat of illness. The other things we do, basic area modification. That's something as simple as dumping out the water, or maybe fixing the leaky faucet that's creating this situation. And then, of course, the public outreach and the education to try to have people understand what they can do to protect themselves and how to stop the breeding in their own backyards. So for Imperial Beach kind of specifically, the biggest problem we usually have here most years is salt marsh mosquitoes. And that's something that is the result of the tides as they come in and out. Whenever we have a high tide event, it can create standing water where the tidal inflow comes in and then sits for a while, and then it allows those mosquitoes to breed. So the mosquitoes that resulted from these they're day biters. They're black and white. Unfortunately, they look very much like these new invasive Aedes mosquitoes, so it's kind of easy to get them confused. So we have to do an investigation when people call in and try to determine which species is really going on here. But oftentimes our regular routine trapping events that we do in the area will tell us what's likely to be going on at the time. But the normal season for those salt marsh mosquitoes tends to be May through October, which is normal mosquito season for much of the other species here too. So you can see real quick by the map I've got up here, I mean, there's a lot of area out there. That's a lot of marsh to cover, and it all has to be done on foot. It's a bit of a challenge for us to be able to get to all those areas in a timely fashion after a high tide event. And the real key here is monitoring the tides. So our current policy is we want to try to get out there within 48 hours after the conclusion of a high tide event, so we can treat all those areas where the water is still holding. And it's been especially difficult because you got two things going on here. One is the king tides, and because those come in and they put water in places that we haven't seen it go before, and it gets very difficult to find all those locations. And also the environment is rather dynamic. It doesn't stay the same. We can't count on the water always going the same places. There's always new places that pop up. So that's one of the challenges that we always have to look for. But we're trying to do a better job of that now in getting out there within 48 hours after that event so we can find as many breeding areas and stop it as possible. So the basic preventative measures are, again, eliminating standing water. And that's especially true now with that new invasive mosquito, the Aedes aegypti, because that one does not breed in our local river streams and marshes and things like that. It's a backyard breeder. It breeds in small sources. So we really need to get the word out to the public that the key to controlling that mosquito is monitoring your own backyards. If you're saving water for whatever purpose, screen it off, carpet it just so the mosquitoes don't have access to it. If you've got other kinds of standing water in the backyard, dump it out. If you really don't need it, just get rid of it, and try to do that on a weekly basis so the mosquitoes don't have time to breed. Other basic things are wearing repellent, screens on windows and doors to try to keep them from entering. And of course, if you have any sort of excessive mosquito activity, please report it to Vector Control. We'll take a look and see what we can do. So hopefully I got it under my time window there. See if you guys have any questions. I don't know if I have time for that.
No, we do. Thank you so much for that excellent presentation. Any questions or comments? The council.
First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Hall for inviting the Vector Control to come down and discuss this with us. I had asked for this, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It was very informative. I'm wondering, can we link to your power presentation, your PowerPoint presentation, and when you're talking about the public outreach, describe for me what you mean by that. We just had a huge event in town. Was there an opportunity perhaps that was overlooked where you could be handing out this information? Just if you would describe your public outreach and how can we help you do a better job with it?
Yeah, and anything that can be done to get the message out, how important it is, especially to eliminate that backyard breeding. All those small sources that are out there in all the backyards add up fast. I mean, it probably exceeds what would be found in one of the larger sources out here that we would be treating, say, with the helicopter. So that's really kind of the big message. And we do a lot of things. We go to a lot of events. And so, I mean, had we known about, maybe I don't know if we had a representative at this latest event that you guys had, but that's something that perhaps we could have attended with an invite. I mean, that's something you guys are always welcome to contact our program. We'll see what we can do. We do a lot of other events. Some years we'll do the Del Mar Fair. We do a lot of like little community events like movie nights and things like that, just to try to get the word out what we can do. We've got a great website. Everyone's encouraged to go there, and from that website you can not only learn about the different issues that are going on, but you can also make reports of things like dead birds for collection, mosquitoes that you're having issues with. You want to make a mosquito complaint, schedule a rat inspection, things like that. There's a lot of stuff that can be done through that website, and it's very informative. And we're looking into media campaigns too. We've done some small ads in the past where we get the word out, try to just remind people how important it is to get rid of that standing water.
Great. So you have literature that we could request and we could hand out to perhaps our women's club and things
Absolutely.
like that? Okay.
Yes, we can do that for
great.
you. Yes.
Thank
Just contact our program. We'll put you in touch with the outreach folks, and they'll get that for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for the great presentation. Remind me, is the Aedes aegypti, is it a Is it a tire breeder? I mean, does it tend to breed in like the insides of tires as well?
Aedes aegypti loves tires. Any small sources, I mean, whether it's a clogged rain gutter. We even had the unfortunate finding of, we found them in a SDG&E vault a few weeks ago, and that was kind of a disappointment because there's a lot of those around the county. We know they don't all have water in them, but it means that's someplace else we have to look now. But any of those smaller sources is a potential breeding ground for that mosquito.
And if they're in those areas where they're not easily accessible, air treatment doesn't really work very well, right?
No, and in fact, aerial treatment really wouldn't even be considered for controlling the larval stages of this mosquito unless we really were having threats of some sort of disease outbreak.
So, obviously, we here in Imperial Beach are very concerned about, we have an area that has a significant amount of tires in it that makes me extremely concerned about our mosquito season that's upcoming. Has the county done any preventative things to make sure that we're out in front of this potential problem?
Well, we have sent staff down to look for breeding in some of those areas. We don't always have easy access to all those locations. It's too hard to get into in some of those spots. But in the areas we have found, again, we haven't found a lot of breeding down in there. But again, if those tires are there and they're holding water and they're not like in the flow of water, so they're getting washed out all the time, then there always is a potential that they could be breeding a few mosquito species we have that'll take advantage of those. So it is something that's a concern of ours.
Okay, and then also I have one last question on the high tides that you're going. Do you? I know that one of the discussions that we had, you did a presentation about a year ago with me, and I saw with your high tide events, are you prioritizing the places in the county that you're going to? Because I know you're a pretty small staff, right? It's not very many.
It's not a big staff, and we do prioritize, but basically we're fortunate that we don't have too many places where the tidal influx causes mosquito breeding. Unfortunately, your area happens to be one of the most significant in terms of size that we have to deal with. But we do have others. I mean, Penasquitos Lagoon can do it. San Elijo Lagoon can do it.
Sure.
There's a few others that have issues, but yours is by far the biggest.
Okay. So I hope that we're one of the higher priorities. Okay.
Yeah. We know we got some big tides coming in the next few days, and our staff is already lined up and ready to go out first thing next week to see what we can find. So.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. Conlon, I think we have a member of the public who'd like to come up and ask you a question. So
Sure.
If you can come up. Yeah.
Mayor, while she's coming up, could I clarify the question that Councilwoman Bragg asked? Could we post this presentation on our webpage?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. You guys already have it, so be my guest.
And then, Mr. Conlon, just for formality's sake, could you just move over and then
Absolutely.
this person can ask you a question and then you can answer it, just so we're all. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
And you could speak into the microphone, please, and state your name.
I have reached out to your agency. I got this note on my door.
Okay.
A complaint from my neighbor because they're complaining that we have rats and mice and squirrels. We don't have rats or mice. We've already cleared that up. But they're saying that we have too many squirrels in my yard and they're going into their yard. And so I reached out to your agency. Then your agency referred me to another agency. That agency referred me to another one. So I still have a squirrel problem. I've got a city inspector coming over to my house in a couple of weeks to make sure that I've gotten rid of all my squirrels. It's an impossibility, I think, and I want to know what I can do or what you can suggest that I do to get rid of the squirrels in my yard. I live only maybe a house away from that all that Navy construction that's going on and across the strand from the estuary. So we've got all kinds of animals in my yard. A skunk, cats from the neighborhood that go into my yard and use it as a toilet, and we've got birds from the estuary that end up, hurt there in my yard. So, do you have a solution to my squirrel problem?
Well, let me clarify too what we can actually do. I mean, when it comes to squirrels, Vector can really only serve in an advisory capacity. So I'm not quite sure. I mean, again, I'm not familiar with this exact complaint, how it went down. But what Vector can do when it comes to squirrels in particular is we can only serve it in an advisory capacity. So when you have squirrels on your property, they're really the property owner's responsibility to decide how they want to take action to control those, if they even want to control them. They're really not considered to be a disease threat down here in the lowlands. So it really is, squirrels are looked at as more of a property destruction sort of a thing. That they burrow, they can undermine things, and they'll get into people's gardens and eat their fruit and whatnot. So again, there's very little Vector can actually do in that case. So you would either have to perform the squirrel control yourself, or you would have to hire a pest control company to come and do it for you. Chose to do that.
I've already called, and they don't do squirrels.
Well, yeah, it's not always
Right.
easy. I mean, there's a lot of pest control companies out there, and so sometimes you unfortunately have to make several phone calls before you. But I know it can be done. There are agencies who will do it
Are
for
we
you
allowed to kill them? Poison them?
on your property. Yes.
And are we allowed to put them in the trash can? Or what do we do after they're dead?
Bag them up, put them in the trash.
Yes? Okay. All right.
Thank you so much. This is democracy in action, by the way. This is city government at its best. Mr. Villa, could you help facilitate so we can make sure we turn this into a win-win and help a resident rather than have someone feel like they're trying to do their best and not feel like they're doing something wrong?
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you so much, Mr. Conlon. Any other questions from our council? Good. Mr. Patton.
Yeah, for you, yeah, we were just having a discussion about how city government works with schools and whatnot. And what have you done with the schools? Have you done any outreach to the elementary schools, high schools? Because we have hundreds of families there.
Yeah, there's a lot of schools out there, and we do presentations at some of the schools from time to time, but obviously there's too many to hit them all. But it's one of those things where if one reaches out to us and we can fit it into the schedule, we'll go make a presentation for them. We're happy to do that.
Is there the same PowerPoint, or do you have something a little different,
no,
flyers?
We gauge the presentations to the audience who we're going to be talking with. So if it's schools and we're speaking with kids, we're obviously going to bring it down to their level. I don't want to start, giving you guys nursery rhymes, obviously. This isn't going to work very well.
Well,
So I
yeah,
wanna
you
make
haven't
sure
been
we
in a
get it
school lately. Let me tell you, we don't do a lot of nursery rhymes. But I will tell you this, with, the life cycle, everybody does butterflies.
Yes.
Now, I just saw this great opportunity right here with your life cycle of a mosquito that I can't wait to do it as a teacher. I mean, that's a great opportunity. So yeah, I'd like to see something that, what you can do locally
Yeah,
here,
that's
especially
easily
as
done.
needed.
Yeah, that's easily done. We just would encourage you after the mosquitoes are reaching adulthood, don't let them go.
Oh no, I'm not going to raise a mosquito.
Yeah.
I was like an art project or something. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, one more.
I think you've answered most of the questions already, and Mr. West actually asked most of what I was going to ask. But the last part of it is, especially with the high surf coming in, the high tides, what about the bay, the South Bay flooding, flood areas, which will be more extensive now? I mean, we always are thinking about the estuary, but there's a lot of inlets and tributaries, et cetera, in the southern part of the bay as well that border on Imperial Beach.
Yes, and our staff are aware of all those areas that do that. So it's not, whenever we have a high tide event, we're obviously not just going to go to Imperial Beach, and we're in the existing marsh that I showed a picture of. We're going to be going to the bay. We have to hit all these locations, and our staff are now, again, our policy is to try to treat within 48 hours after the high tide event, so we can make sure we get them while they're still in the early larval stage and more susceptible to the product that we're using. So we'll be hitting all those areas, and our staff are on alert after the high tides. We shift high priority to that. So our guys are going to be working tides for the few days after the high tide events, and then they go back to their regular duties. So. Sure.
Mr. Conlon, thanks to you and your staff for all the work you do, and it's good to see preventative government in action. I think, what is it, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, so thank you so much for doing
you're
great
welcome.
work.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. Thanks.
Sure.
And now we have item 1.2, Surfrider Foundation presentation on the carbon connection. Julia Chun Hare, San Diego County Policy Manager for Surfrider, will give the presentation. Oh, Julia, you're not doing it? Oh, two of us, okay. Just a comment. First of all, I want to thank Surfrider for all the great work they do to help us clean up the Tijuana River Valley and work on water quality issues. I'm sure you're aware that the first victory for Surfrider was in Imperial Beach in 1984. I was part of that, stopping a 1 mile long breakwater that would have destroyed all the surf here. So that used to be on the wall somewhere in Surfrider with all the make waves covers or whatever. So anyway, Thanks to Surfrider for their long-standing presence at Imperial Beach. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members. My name is Adam Juneau. I co-chair the Climate Action Committee of the Surfrider Foundation. I'm also a coastal California native, having grown up in Los Angeles, visiting beaches every other weekend. I recently trained with Al Gore in the Climate Reality Project, getting the most up-to-date recent scientific data on climate change. And in no uncertain terms, the situation is dire. But with aggressive solutions and aggressive action now, we can actually make some change. Let's see here. There we go. Yeah, so that's the planet as we all know it. This is the first photograph that it was ever taken of on the Apollo 8 mission by the astronauts, but it really shows the sort of limited smallness of it. There are only so many resources on the planet, and it just exemplifies how finite it is. Coming a little closer, we see ecosystems, and there are so many ecosystems within our planet. Each of our neighborhoods are really ecosystems, but really what this is the example of ecosystems working together. And everything all works together, especially in a changing environment. Ecosystems will change other parts of the environment. Moving closer into local climate change impacts, beaches are really important in San Diego and in Southern California. The economics of beach businesses, tourism, and recreation are going to be dramatically diminished. Storms are going to happen more often. We've already seen drought and wildfires happening. The quality of air is going to continue to decrease. And infectious disease also, much like the previous speaker was speaking to certain mosquitoes coming up further up north. And then, let's see here. So I'm going to skip that one actually. Was a little talked a little bit. In the United States alone, 12 million people are at risk for sea level rise. And I know you guys already have sea level rise on the books anyways. So this is just a reminder and to really speak to how many people live in coastal cities. My family's from New Orleans, and I'm kind of concerned about their long-term future, especially after Katrina. But this is mostly about what City Council can do. And there are active steps we can take and you can take more specifically. We can move towards zero waste, which is a more comprehensive waste management system. We can move towards 100% renewables through a community choice aggregation. The man earlier was speaking about how litigation with the oil company was bad for families. But I'd like to say that because we are so dependent on oil right now, we need to move towards more renewable resources that are not oil dependent. We need to move towards transportation alternatives, which ultimately what that means is better communities, more biking, more public transit, and closer communities, closer knit communities. And we need to make it measurable and enforceable, because if it's not measurable, then other cities can't follow that lead. And if it's not enforceable, then people aren't going to do it. And I'll leave you with this. Action is the antidote to despair. Joan Baez said that, but we need to take action now, because it is becoming a point in which despair is setting in because of the extreme situation, and I don't think a lot of people really understand it as far as the actual science of the matter, but because we're not seeing it right here, right now, this is sort of a far off thing. Have you guys seen those pictures of trash cans melting in Arizona? There's literally becoming inhospitable situations in places where people live. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Perfect. So I am Julia Chen here, and I'm the policy manager for Surfrider San Diego. And I'm going to talk to you briefly about the water energy connection, which is a missing link in most climate action plans. Water's not front of mind when we think about climate action planning, but in fact 20% of all of the energy we use here in California is spent moving, pumping, and treating water around this state. So there are huge greenhouse gas emission savings to be had in the water industry. Historically, this is how we've managed our water, with independent, fragmented, and siloed departments. The challenges of this approach will only increase with climate change. For instance, the flood department might try to get the water off the land as fast as possible, treating it like a nuisance, but that creates a problem for stormwater and also creates a problem in water supply. This is an illustration of our current water management, which we at Surfrider lovingly call the cycle of insanity. So basically, we use a lot of energy getting water here from Northern California. We use it once and then we send it out to the ocean. And now we actually spend more energy turning around to desalinate the water to use it again. Here are a couple examples of what we would like to see. And basically, we're encouraging cities to look at climate action planning more holistically. So encouraging things like an ocean-friendly gardens program, which not only reduces water demand and reduces stormwater pollution, but also creates healthy soil, which can help sequester carbon as well. So low-impact development, on-site capture, reducing demand. I know we've all seen the 3 R's before. Here it is applied to water. And I'm going to call your attention to reducing the energy and pollution portion of it. And so basically at Surfrider, we're on a bit of a roadshow. We're going around to the cities and encouraging cities and agencies to start demanding water based on a loading order of embedded energy. And what I mean by that is pursuing the water sources that take the least energy first. So water conservation, stormwater capture, water reuse before we start turning to things like importing more water or desalinating. Basically, we want to look at our water supply sources much like we're learning to look at our energy sources, so using the best ones first. And so we can expect to see about 6 feet of sea level rise by 2100, and most people think of that as a horizontal measurement. It's actually a vertical measurement, and so just 1 foot of sea level rise can actually cover anywhere from 30 to 50 feet of beach space depending on the slope of the beach. And so a lot of stormwater or electrical infrastructure can be in harm's way with just 1 foot of sea level rise. I know that your city is conducting its sea level rise vulnerability assessment, and we know that in IB we're going to see more stormwater backup with increased sea level rise. Del Mar is expecting the widest part of their beach to disappear between 2030 and 2060. You know, that's in our lifetime. That's not too far off. So, I can't stress enough the importance of planning early, which your city is doing well on sea level rise. We're encouraging the climate action planning as well. And we really hope cities will have the courage to talk about managed retreat. You know, we have a dire future in front of us, and we need to get ahead of the curve. We need to ask these questions early and often, and the earlier you start, the more options you're going to have. And studies, including your sea level rise vulnerability assessment, show that starting early and looking at managed retreat can actually save you money in the long run. So it can be an overwhelming problem, but you're doing the right thing. It's the environmental challenge of our time, and I'm just here to encourage you to start the conversation. This is a connection that people don't always recognize right away. Reporting the greenhouse gas emissions with water supply is something that's done voluntarily, but we need cities like yours to encourage the decision makers to take that into account. We need to change the demand from the bottom up. Because otherwise we're basically, creating one problem to solve another, and we need to look at climate change holistically and from all avenues. So I'm available for questions, happy to follow up with staff later, but really thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Questions, comments? Mr. West?
Adam, Julia, thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. It's good to see you guys, and it was a fantastic presentation, and I feel very strongly about the things you're talking about, and we will, with the leadership, our the city's got already great leadership, but we're going to continue to work with you, and I look forward to continue this relationship, and I know that Chris he's already we've kind of been talking about that already, so Mr. Helmer.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much.
Sure.
Other comments, questions? Mr. Spriggs?
I think Surfrider and our other environmental organizations are doing a great job supporting all of the San Diego coastal cities in their efforts to move forward, and also supporting the pure water effort by the city of San Diego to recycle for potable use a large portion of the water that normally goes into the ocean, which serves a lot of purposes. One, we have a more secure water supply, and secondly, we put less effluent into the ocean. So keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Questions, comments, any other? So unfortunately, Mr. Van Zandt, who's a good friend of ours, and gave a very respectful, collegial difference of opinion from the council, which was great to see, but just give some updates on things that we're doing. We're doing our LCP update, which will include a climate action plan as part of that planning process. We're already seeing the impacts of sea level rise and climate change in Imperial Beach for the more frequent and climate instability. So we had, for example, we're seeing things we've never seen before. The highest winds ever recorded in our city, 72 miles an hour storm that happened sort of off the winter, and our fire department remembers that and the damage that happened at the south end of Seacoast Drive. We're seeing southern hemisphere storms that are stronger than ever, some of the largest southern hemisphere storms we've seen with coastal erosion year-round. In fact, our beach has not recovered from the winter. We've lost most of our sand, and even with all the south swell we've seen recently, there's no sand coming from the south to replenish the beach, so we're seeing a lot of erosion this summer. We're seeing the hottest temperatures we've ever been recorded in history, so that's something we are experiencing, and obviously our folks who are east are experiencing. And then we're seeing significant changes to our coastline, and we've seen the most significant coastal flooding we've ever experienced along our beachfront, on the estuary, and of course along the bayshore, our bayfront, in which at some point we had the entire Bayshore Bikeway underwater. So we're seeing it, we're taking action on it, but I think the thing that is different from us and other very wealthy coastal communities is we've made a commitment to providing affordable housing. The other groovy coastal cities don't have affordable housing. We've made a commitment to doing sedimentation, to stormwater capture basins. So if you look at our new shopping center, we've got a great new stormwater capture basin. We're gonna do more of those. So we're trying to do all those best practices, but unlike the groovy, very, very, very wealthy, millionaire laden communities like Malibu and Encinitas and all those groovy places to the north, we just don't have any money. And so that's something we've got to work with the legislature to do, is to make sure that communities with a 25% poverty rate like Imperial Beach are prioritized for funding for projects that help deal with reducing our emissions and dealing with climate impacts, because it really frankly isn't fair that the 1% can afford to do this, but the 99% really can't. So that's something that we are really cognizant of, and we've had a discussion about at Sandag, and are concerned about the fact that when we go compete for grants that will help us reduce our emissions and be more sustainable and actually just a better community, we're competing with communities like Carlsbad who have $20 million in the bank.
Yeah.
So that's something that we've got to deal with regionally and statewide. But I want to thank you guys for coming out. We're going to continue to work with you and all kinds of other organizations to protect our coastline, and we appreciate all the support you can give us to make it a win-win.
Yeah, definitely. We're here to help, and thinking of those beaches as cool zones, as a place where everybody from every economic walk of life can cool down, and making sure there's beach space for them to take care of that. So thank you so much.
Great. Thanks for coming out. We appreciate it. All right. Okay. Great. And now we have consent calendar items 2.1 to 2.13. And before that, we have Ginger Sacco and Baron Partlow who would like to speak on the item 2.9. Would you guys like to come up? One of you, Baron or Ginger? Or both? Or one and the other?
Baron Partlow, 1868 Catella Street, San Diego, California, 92154. What I have here is an email from Lori Kuzmansky from International Boundary Water Commission. And what it says here is IBWC does not fall under public notice law. We are not required to take minutes and post them on our website. That means they are not required to take minutes or post agendas to the public. They do it as a courtesy. It says here they're not required to. And I know that Mr. Sprigg is a co-chair on the Citizens Forum during the meetings. And the next one is coming up on September 7th, and I would like to ask if Mr. Sprigg could get on the agenda for us an update from the International Boundary and Water Commission US on exactly what they're doing on the sewage issues. A couple weekends ago and the weekend before that, we smelled very strong odors of sewage in the river valley, and some residents around the estuary were also reporting the same thing. Yet IBWC did not report any spills. I went to the Border Patrol station. Their staff at the station said there was nothing happening, but I went out into the field and their agents told me, yes, it was strong. And so I'm getting conflicting reports there too. And that's about it for this item agenda. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Ginger Sacco, 1390 Santa Alicia Ave, 15106 Chula Vista 91913. So Stop the Poops has been kind of busy. We have reached out to Ruth in Alvarez's office. She has not responded to us. We were asking about dredging.
I'm sorry, whose office?
Alvarez, David Alvarez's
David
office.
Okay.
We did obtain all California OES documents from Steve Smalling regarding all the spills for 2017. We've requested proof of all dredging plans for future current status and for it to be added to the San Diego City Council docket. We reached out to Chris McFadden. We released a press release to Dig IB and it was published. We reported to IBWC of the river gauge not working twice and erroneous data. Apparently their satellites have been not responding from El Paso to here, and at one point the bubbler was dry. We organized a march on the Mexican consulate. We obtained documents from Chris McFadden, the Director of Transportation and Stormwater Department regarding Tijuana River Valley, the 5-year plan. We also reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers, providing the agreement with the City of San Diego for the dredging of the pilot channel. We wrote a letter to the RNC chairwoman requesting her assistance because our elected officials are blocking us. We reached out to the IBWC PAO Lori for minutes of IBWC Citizens Forum not being posted on the website. That is how we received our minutes, is because we had to reach out to her and beg for them. We reached out to David Gibson for minutes of the Environmental Justice Symposium. They don't have minutes yet. Like I said, we marched on the Mexican consulate. We were live when we did it. We received 3,000 views. We have, as Barron mentioned, we have continuously received complaints of the stench of sewage. We did finally get the media recognize our stance on the sewage spills, that they are environmental and biological terrorist attack on the United States of America. We have continued to reach out to our community via our social media websites, and we continue to monitor the IBWC river gauge flow and height levels for spills. That's all I have. Thank you. You're welcome.
Great. So, comments, questions? Great. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve consent calendar items numbers 2.1 through 2.13.
So moved.
Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. And now we have public hearing 4.1, and that's Jeff Katz, architecture applicant on behalf of the city. Regular coastal permit, design review case, site plan review, and categorical exemption pursuant to CEQA guidelines 15332. Infill development for a new senior community center to replace the existing senior facilities at 1075 8th Street. Public hearing is called to order and will receive report from City Planner Fultz. Oh, I guess Mr. Dush. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Steve Dush. What I'd like to do before I turn it over to the architecture firm is just provide us a brief history about how we got to this point. So if you recall, back in October of 2015, we had a discussion in these chambers regarding the merits of either remodeling the existing senior center or whether or not that senior center should be rebuilt. Following that discussion, there was consensus to go and do a complete reconstruction. So then what the city staff had done is it prepared CDBG applications and had requested and successfully gained approval to receive 2-year funding in order to get the funds to go out then and submitted a request for some architectural guidance. At that point, we selected John Katz Architecture, who was also the firm who had done the library. And so the site, of course, is immediately adjacent to it. So following the selection of JKA, Mayor Pro Tem Bragg, who was a champion of this, along with the rest of the team, both from JKA and city staff, went out and toured a number of different facilities in and around the county, identified the good things, the bad things, the what to do, what not to do, assembled that information, and went out and had some outreach meetings with various groups within the community. Took that information back, came back to y'all in, I think it was May, and got some preliminary direction. Received that, went back in the community again, toured some more, and then went to the Parks and Rec and the Design Review Board. And the Design Review Board made a recommendation on the proposal that's before you this evening. And so that's just sort of a brief background about how we got to where we're at. I can say that, we had identified a number of different designs. Some folks said, hey, this needs to be larger. Some folks said this needs to be smaller. Some folks were saying, hey, why don't we just kind of revamp what we had? But at the end of the day, what we tried to do is present a design that Nancy will be presenting here in a moment that tried to keep all of those existing elements that were important to the existing users, but also keeping an eye on the future in terms of what the seniors of tomorrow, and some of us are getting closer to that every day, are going to be needing. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nancy to provide the designs.
Thank you. Thank you for having us back to talk to you again about the Senior Center. We're just as excited as we were in May, actually probably more so. But I'm not going to rehash everything that we talked about before. We put together some slides so that you can see kind of the further development that we've done. And then we've got a short animation at the end, and then we'll open it up for questions. So this is where it's situated on the site, just north of the new Imperial Beach Library. This gives it the most optimal placement because we've got parking along 8th Street. We've got the boardwalk, which separates the new senior center from the library, and it also creates a connection to Veterans Park. This is the site plan blown up just so that you can see the senior center. The boardwalk that we were talking about before that splits the senior center from the library is along the bottom. And we've pulled the main entry of the senior center just north and tucked it up inside so that we've got kind of a space between the boardwalk and the entry, which becomes this sort of nice plaza area where people can have a pre-function space if there's something happening in the senior center, or just a place to gather, hang out before you go into the senior center or into the park. And then we've got a loading entrance for deliveries and things like that up on the north side, closer to the kitchen and that dining space. So we're separating the main visitor entry from the loading entry. We've color-coded the floor plan so that you can see the multi-purpose spaces, which are in the dark teal color. So you've got the largest multi-purpose space, which is separated by an operable partition. That can be used for dining, that could be used for conferences, that could be used for large groups of exercise activity. We've got some smaller spaces, which we've identified as exercise, art, Serenity Lounge and lobby, and then a TV and activity room where we can show movies. Of course, those are flexible spaces, so as needs and programming changes, we can, provide for what the community is looking for. In the darker blue are the two breakout spaces for patio, one that's just north off of the kitchen and dining space for revenue opportunities. If you've got people that are coming to rent the space for birthdays or weddings, that gives you kind of a little bit of a private space, which we'll look at later. And then a smaller patio off of the exercise room. The community indicated that they weren't very excited about working out outside, but they wanted to be able to bring that inside, the outside in, so they're able to kind of open up and get the fresh air. And then the gray spaces are the kitchen, the restrooms, so circulation and service space. One, I'm not sure who brought it up, but I think it was a great idea to put the model of the library in so that you have some context to be able to view the senior center. So right now we're standing just south of the boardwalk at the library entrance, looking at the entry of the senior center. So you can see that kind of area pulled back, the plaza area off of the boardwalk for the pre-function space. There's some seating, some lower planting, and then you can see the tower that juts up with the cowl wall that you can see glowing at night and kind of see it from all different directions. So you've got kind of a wayfinding. And then of course we use the Imperial Beach blue mare on the signage. This is an aerial view that we wouldn't see necessarily. Maybe the gentleman that was from the Vector group would see this, but kind of gives you an opportunity to see the two together with the wave of the library and the sort of tower element on the senior center. This just steps back a little bit so that you can see the tower kind of flanked by the, we looked at using different materials to kind of break up the spaces. So this is looking in towards the art space that opens up onto the plaza area with the existing bike racks and seating. This is a view from Veterans Park. So you can see sort of the library together with the senior center. There's some of the same similar shapes, having a conversation, but not being a replica of the two. So we want it to have its own identity. This is another one from the park, just a little bit further north. And thank you for bringing that out. It shows some of the exterior surfaces that we were talking about using. We know that we were talking about kind of natural materials, and the community was interested in having woods and things like that, but we know that it won't hold up well over time with the coastal air. So we chose some sort of wood look tiles that will be easily cleanable, will hold up much better than wood in the exterior. And we wanted to sort of temper that with darker large format tiles and some of the lighter stucco, so that we've got a little bit of variation there. So this is showing you that. Further up, you can see the sort of breakout space off of the kitchen and dining area for events. Gives you a little bit of privacy, but you still are able to have a conversation with the park. And this is looking directly into that space. So you can see on the right side is the kitchen entry, and then the left side is the patio that's right off of the dining area. This is along 8th Street. We're looking at the kitchen. So some of these spaces, actually all of these spaces here, are windowless because we've got commercial kitchen on the left side, then you've got the restrooms, then you've got the movie room. So we don't want to put windows in there, but we did want to break up those spaces with different materials. We thought this would be the perfect place for either community art or maybe Aaron Chang, something cool for the city to be able to put into this space and sort of bring you in along 8th Street as you're approaching. This is coming right back around to between the senior center and the library. And this is once we enter. So we didn't do a whole lot of interior spaces, but we thought we would just give you a taste of what would happen when you walk inside the lobby. We were talking about having a small lobby space. You probably wouldn't hang out specifically in there, but if you hadn't been there before, this is where you could get a cup of coffee. You could check in with whoever's working to figure out where you'd like to go. Are you interested in an exercise class? And then we've got this sort of translucent wall, a partial height wall, so you still have the feeling of the cow wall and this great museum light coming in that separates this Zen reading room, where you've got the donor wall on the back.
Man, I love your photo selection. They're awesome. Wow.
Yeah,
Taste.
that's pretty cool, right? So we broke it up so you've got kind of some options if you're looking to read in with another person, or some tables for studying. So this kind of main Zen space was kind of what inspired the beginning of where our concept came from. So that is what we've got, and we've got a little animation at the end. Well, there are a couple cars in there, but they're not moving. Actually, we talked about putting music, and we couldn't exactly agree on what we were going to set it to, so. Noted. So if anyone has any questions or...
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's really beautiful. And I mean, what's not to love about this design? I'm sort of the hardhead, practical or person when it comes to looking at this, though. And it comes out of my 15 years at UC San Diego, where I was hired to actually help them grow the campus facilities from the time the campus was at about 12,000, 13,000 students to 30,000, where it is now. And I retired 3 years ago. And so I've been involved in a lot of building designs, maybe directly in a dozen, indirectly on the project committees for maybe 20 or 30. And the design process followed a very similar process to what was done here, with a couple important exceptions. You start with the potential users and an architect, and you kind of get an idea of what are the needs and what sort of design would meet those needs best. But there's something that happened in the university context that didn't happen here, I don't think, and that is maybe because of the size of the city. We don't have our own city architect, but there was always a campus architect working, and me, the person responsible for the budget for student affairs. And we never set a figure for a target figure for this design. And we didn't have, our own architect on it to sort of guard that figure. So what happened was we got a wonderful design, a beautiful project that's at the present cost estimate is $6.2 million. And I would remind us that that's the number that we looked at a few months ago when this first came before us, was that this design is about 6.2. By the time construction drawings are done and it's bidded out, my experience over all those projects is that it's going to be at least 25 to 50% higher when the bids come in. It's probably going to be coming in between 8 and 10 million. So my concern is this project going to get built? And are our seniors really going to get what they need, which is a new senior center? We started, as was pointed out earlier, looking at a renovation of the existing center. I'm not saying we should go back to that, but we were talking on the order of maybe $500,000 for renovation. And it was pretty clear that we didn't think that that was going to do the job with the existing structure. But now we're at almost three times the size of the existing structure in terms of square footage. And I'm not sure that was necessarily the original thought either. I guess what I'm saying is that projects that are well-intentioned can expand to the, and we kind of wanted this. We wanted to think big. We wanted to dream big about this project, but we didn't apply parameters to avoid it being something that we're probably not going to see built. And it's always hard to be the bad guy in these projects. I've certainly played that role in, like I said, many projects at the campus where we're building something for students or faculty and staff or researchers, and they always, on the design committees, they always want X, Y, and Z. And if there's no checks and balances, there's going to be a design, and I've seen this happen, that when it's bid out, there's no budget for it. It has to be scaled back. Everybody then gets very disappointed. Going from euphoria to disappointment is a terrible thing to watch, especially when you see it with students, when they can't get the facilities that they really want and need because they've been in a process they've given their heart and soul to design, and then This is an efficient use of our time. The design and the footprint and the features that we are here to discuss are what equals a project that we aren't going to be able to fund. I'm not directing criticism. I'm talking about the design. And if you wouldn't interrupt me, I would be able to be finished in a couple minutes, okay? Because I'm telling a story that is about how these projects can happen and how they may not happen. And I want to see it happen. I think we all do. So I guess to make a long story short, I would like to see, as we go to further development of the design, options for either modularizing the design or cutting it back to somewhere around the $3 million level as one option. Maybe we proceed with two designs at the same time. One is maybe a more modest one, the other one is the full-fledged one. But what I'm begging is that we come up with a project that the city can build or find the funding for so our seniors can have a new senior center. That is the goal here, is a new senior center that has the facilities that our seniors deserve and not the present one. Not a pie-in-the-sky project that everybody loves by design, but is not going to really happen in Imperial Beach anytime soon. And that is what I'm commenting on. Design equals cost equals feasibility equals when you're going to be able to do it. If we proceed with a design to final construction drawings along these lines, and it comes in at $8 to $10 million, then what? We then have to spend money to value engineer it back to something that we can afford, or we have to go back to redesign completely, or it has to be rebid, etc. I've seen this happen. I'm just saying, I'm trying to give you my experience, my concern. I'm not trying to say we don't want a senior center, we don't need a senior center, we don't want a beautiful senior center, we don't want a larger senior center. I would like to see all of those things. But I think we have to be realistic about how we're going about this, and we did not have the checks and balances in place that normally result in fighting these things out during the concept design, so you don't end up with something that is going to be extremely difficult to finance later on. Thank you. So my question, I guess, then is it possible to have some alternative variations going forward as you do the more detailed drawings leading to construction, bid documents, etc.? Or are we totally committed to what is already $6.2 million and building on that with more detailed design drawings?
Let me try to take a swing at that, because the contract that we have with JKA was pretty finite in terms of what the sort of outreach process was, coming up with initial designs. So if there is a deviation from what that process is, we would need to sort of huddle up, get direction to find out if that's what we wanted to do in terms of alternative designs, and then figure out what that scope would look like, and then come back. I don't think I could answer that right now in terms of can we have. Well, I can answer the question about having alternative designs. That's outside of the existing scope of the contract that we had. So that would be a different discussion in terms of if we're coming in with a fixed dollar amount, that's a different discussion. What we tried to do in realizing what this plan or this design is looking like is, again, identifying what those uses are that the seniors currently have, identifying the deficiencies that are out there, and then kind of backing into what that design would look like. We did, following a discussion that we had, Councilmember Spriggs, along with the design team a couple of weeks ago, talk a little bit about the modularization, if that's even a word. It's my word, I guess. That becomes tricky, especially because one of the largest features that we heard from the community and some of the outreach that we had done is the large sort of meeting space, of which there really isn't a very large meeting space in the community. And so that was a priority that we had heard from a lot of the outreach that we had done. So if you take some of those things apart, then you're resulting in a use that doesn't offer a lot of the facility or a lot of the uses that are currently there today. One of the uses that the seniors and folks that use the facility said that they really want to have is a kitchen, to cook their own food and have things like that. And again, with today's regulations, having a commercial kitchen, that's a big cost. So anyhow, I'll stop. But I guess the short answer to answer your initial question about can we have parallel designs? Of course, if the council wants to give us direction and authorize additional funding for an alternative study or a parallel study, those are all discussions that we can certainly have. But the scope of the study that we had for this particular project would not allow for multiple designs.
Was there a prioritization of requirements from things that are absolutely essential to things that would be great if they can be afforded in the concept design and the identification of the things that needed to be included in the design?
Yes, there absolutely was, in terms of that iterative sort of design process that we had went through. One example that I can provide to you is when we went to the DRB had indicated that this entry feature should be larger, it should be more grand, it should be even more robust. That's one example that I'm sharing with you in terms of, we had heard from one group saying that the entry feature needs to be larger. And as you saw through the presentation that Nancy had provided, it's a rather modest sort of entry component. So that's just one example. I don't have others just right off the top of my head, but there was that sort of iterative design process that we had went through where some individuals are saying, we want a larger workout room, or we want to have, almost like a gym-like facility. And you can see, I think, in the site plan, if memory serves, the workout area on the, I guess it would be the eastern part of the building, was like 500 square feet. So, I mean, it's not like an LA gym or something like that. So there was that sort of back and forth in terms of this should be there, this shouldn't be there, this should be larger. So yes, that was a part of that iterative process.
Thank you so much. And at this time, if you'd like to sit down, we can get into the political part of this, but I really appreciate your time and the thoughtfulness you put into our senior center.
Thanks.
Oh, did you? I thought you didn't.
That's why.
Yeah, I guess I didn't want to have our consultants just standing there while we're commenting. So, did you want to make a comment on the design? Go ahead, please. Yes.
I will. First of all, I would like to thank you both, all three of you, for being here. I understand you're celebrating celebrating a landmark anniversary, so congratulations on that. I would like to thank you for responding to the comments from the community about the design. And yes, there were a lot of comments. And so the features that are represented here are in direct response to those comments. And there was not prioritization that a kitchen was first or a reading room was second, but they're all here. That's what's important. The design, I think, captures and enhances the library. The entryway, I think, is probably going to be the most fantastic focal point on what several of us are considering this to be now a center city development. So it's in the middle of town, you know, and the proximity to one of our largest developments that we've had in the community is just phenomenal. So I just really wanted to thank you for your design, for your patience that was needed for this. Going out to the other senior centers, we had fun. It was very eye-opening for all of us, including Mr. Helmers. So I wanted to thank you for that too. I think that was above and beyond what was tasked for your company. I think you achieved the goal that we set before you. So thank you. We will have comments, but I'm ready to hear from the public if we all are.
I have Nancy Dayton. Did you want to make a comment? Yeah, okay, thank you. Wasn't sure. Just wanted to make sure.
Nancy Dayton, 1330 5th Street, Imperial Beach. I'm here representing the seniors and the Imperial Beach Women's Club. Your design is fantastic, and do we need it? If these termites ever quit holding hands, we aren't going to have a senior center. And I would like to thank the city that has kept that building and that facility up, and it's a hodgepodge of buildings. We're scattered all over. If the city hadn't had the quality people working on that, it would be terrible. And we lost quite a bit when we gained our library, but we're making do. One of the things that's so fantastic is the exercise room. Currently, you have senior people moving carts over to the library to take the weights, the this, the that go with the exercise group. We've now utilized one room of the community room. We're now spreading to the second room. But we've also had issues with making sure the doors are closed, and it's kind of a work in progress in melding this into the new library. A senior center, all of our own? Oh, yes. And please get it done while I'm still on this earth. Thank you very much.
Baron Partlow, do you want to speak or just support the measure?
Baron Partlow, I've had meetings over the last 12 years in that senior center. And before that, we had them on the beach, and the city let us take them into the senior center. And yeah, the termites are one of the concerns, and the leaks and everything else. The facility is in disrepair, and I'm glad everybody here except this gentleman is sitting down to hear this, because I know it's going to come as a great shock. I'm a member for life of the senior center, so I do have a stake in it, and I do support the design. We'll find the funding somehow. We always do. And that was a great job, a great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Partlow. Okay, so I've got Mr. Patton on top of the list. If you guys want to, now we can have more of the general comments. So just want to make sure we're clear about process so we give the public the opportunity to speak. Mr. Patton.
Sure, thank you. And I want to first of all thank Mrs. Bragg and the outreach committee for going above and beyond. Like you said, you really did your homework, and that's what's important. And nobody can say that you didn't do due diligence in looking at this to make sure you did the right job for our city. So this is the type of infrastructure that's needed and well overdue in Imperial Beach. If you look at Imperial Beach, long ago, we had a new lifeguard station built. That was one of the biggest facilities that was new in our city. Since then, Pier South, the library, 9th and Palm. True, the footprint of this one is larger and the cost is up there, but don't our residents and seniors deserve it? Is that a yes? Yes, that's what I thought I heard. And since I've been on the council, two of my big priorities have been youth and seniors. And I think I've taken care of a big chunk of the youth in being on the ad hoc committee, take at Sports Park, making sure that we had Little League, the Boys and Girls Club, skate park, and making sure that they were all taken care of. I haven't had the opportunity really to take care of the seniors like I'd like to. And now we have the opportunity to do so. Now's the opportunity to really, to honorably and respectfully support our seniors. And I'm 100% for this project. I'll fight hard to get this project started. And truthfully, I'd be shooting myself in the foot if I didn't support this project. And the big picture here is I trust City Manager Hall, Doug Bradley, Steve Douche, our staff, that they would not present a project like this if they didn't think it couldn't be done. They just wouldn't do that. And so I trust you. And I believe it can be done, will be done. And thank you very much for a great project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Mr. West.
I'm not sure I want to follow Councilmember Patton.
I know.
But,
well said.
yeah. I look at this project and I think to myself, is really the question, are we building this for today's seniors? Or are we building this for the future seniors? The seniors in our community and in the world are the fastest growing population right now. I mean, we should be building a bigger project because I'm getting old. I want to enjoy the senior center, and I'd actually want the gym bigger, but that's not my concern right now. I want to make sure, as the mayor and myself and Councilmember Spriggs, I hear what you're saying. Councilmember Spriggs and the mayor and I were at the Ball the last week, and we held it in the parking lot of the Boys and Girls Club. Is that really what we want to be holding our ball at? I think that we have the opportunity to make a space between this senior center and our library, and that's where we need to be holding our balls and events for the next future. Open that area up and then walk into our amazing senior center and be proud of it. And not that I mind the parking lot, because Lord knows I've drank a few beers in parking lots before, but I am getting 50, and I would rather have an opportunity to do it in a place where I could feel like this is what we should be doing in the city of Imperial Beach. So I really think that this is, as we move forward in our community, an event and a structure that is the next step. And it's gonna be a challenge. I hear what you're saying about the money, Ed. Councilmember Spriggs, I do, but I also think that that's part of our job, is to go out there and find funding too. So I'm all for it, 100%.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Bragg.
Thank you. My comments might be a little disjointed, but they're my thoughts on the project, so I'm just going to kind of go at it from there. I was the program coordinator at our senior center before I was elected to city council. I worked in that building. Just a little bit of history on the building. It was dedicated in January of 1974. That's 45 years ago. A long time ago. I just turned 60, and I'm having to do some infrastructure replacements in my own body. And I'm 15 years older than this building, so it's time that it happens. And as you look around our community and you look at the projects that have been built of late, and Mr. Patton, the lifeguard station was actually built by the Port of San Diego. So when is the last time that the city of Imperial Beach made a substantial investment in the infrastructure of this community? 45 years ago. Been a while. It's been a while. I look at this senior center project as a placeholder for the future, for our futures and generations to come. It's important that, and it's like you said, Councilmember West, you know, that demographic is just growing by leaps and bounds. We need to recognize that. Councilmember Spriggs, I do thank you for bringing up the funding issue. Besides the design, it's the most critical component of it. But I can tell you, I would not bring a pie-in-the-sky project forward if I didn't think it could be funded. I wouldn't do that to this community. I'm going to ask Councilmember Hall to chime in on the funding aspect of it. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. See, I'm going to ask. I know. Fastest campaign ever. To chime in on the funding component of it. Believe me, it's not something we looked at lightly. It's not something that was just, said, oh, we'll find the money somewhere. That's not fiscally responsible. So Andy, if you could, please address that issue on the funding, you and I have talked about it. Steve, you and I have talked about it. Doug, you and I have talked about it. We've talked about it individually. We've talked about it as council members at this dais. So if you would just refresh our memory on some of these, and not only this project, but others that might be in the pipeline as well.
Councilwoman Bragg, I shared with some of you a diagram, and if we get through our comments, if we can, when this presentation is taken down, if I could put that up, it's easier to talk about it with a diagram. So if you don't mind, if I just wait until we get all the comments, and then we can change the, are you done? Okay. So Ed, if you can pull up that diagram. Yeah, it is very nice. Oh, perfect. Perfect. So one of the things that I tried to, I've had an opportunity to talk with some of the council members about some of the opportunities and yet some of the challenges that we have as a community. And so I wanted to put it graphically a little bit about where we are as a city. And I think that this helps all of us to think this way. At least I hope it does. But if you look at this diagram and you look inside the blue circle and you look at our tree of a city, if you will, what we have is down at the bottom, feeding the roots of our city here, we have the TOT, we have franchise fees, the gas tax, property tax, sales tax, Port of San Diego, vehicle licensing fees, and we have these revenues that are feeding, if you will, the tree of Imperial Beach. And what we provide right now today is, we have public safety, we have the sheriff, fire department, lifeguards, we have the Tidelands, municipal services, administration, finance, community development, public works, the CIP projects that we're doing with road improvements, whatnot, natural resources. We have our municipal partners that we have to make sure that we're keeping up with that. And so you can kind of see that. And in the middle there, we have our mission statement. And our mission statement, of course, is to create and enhance to enhance Imperial Beach's classic Southern California beach-oriented community with a safe small town atmosphere, rich in cultural and natural resources. There isn't a better mission statement for any beach community anywhere than our mission statement, and the council has identified that as our mission, and it's just ideal. But what we have today is, if you stay inside that blue circle, we have the revenues that are necessary to provide everything in that blue circle, and we're very stable right now. We have very stable revenues, and we're able to provide these services to the community on a very stable basis. And we look out and making sure that we can do that. Now, off to the upper right-hand side, you can see some dark clouds out on the horizon. We do have some CalPERS issues that we need to think about. And we've got environmental issues, as you know. We've got the river valley. We've got sea level rise. We've got some things that we need to worry about. The national economy, competition for quality employees. We just finished up our negotiations. And so we have some things out there that we need to be aware of as we go. But now we have the community, and as our community matures and we're having all these great things come to our community, I think that the vision of our residents have changed a little bit, and we're hearing things like, hey, we'd like to have a new swimming pool, or we'd like to remodel our city buildings, which we're talking about here, a senior citizen center, make sure that we have sidewalks on every street and complete all of our alleys and other community enhancements. they're a little outside of our blue circle right now, a little outside of our revenue stream. And so if we want to do these things, and I think that they're all very, very important, and I think, again, we don't want to present anything that we don't have a pathway to get there. Now, is it going to take some actions from the city and some support from the residents? There's no doubt about that. But when you look down at the bottom, there's some things that maybe we need to look at. We've got some assets that maybe we need to liquidate or we need to look at in a different way. You know, do we look at the potential increase in TOT? And that's certainly a great funding source for us. And our TOT is lower than most of our neighboring cities, if not all of our neighboring cities. So do we look at that? And if we're going to invite tourists to come to our community, do we have them help us pay for some of these facilities that will make our community a nicer place? We have a public works yard that is right on the bay that right now is maybe underutilized. And is there a better place for our public works yard where we might be able to monetize that public works yard and use it for some of these things we're trying to accomplish? We have a sewer system that is an asset that we need to talk to our residents about and make sure that maybe there's a better way to provide sewer services and yet bring some revenue to our city. Some of the relinquishment funding, do we invest that in a good way so that we get a better return for it than right now when we invest cash? The council knows the way we have to invest cash, we get less than 1% return on that. Is there better ways to use cash to get some of these things done? Do we take a hard look at vacation rentals? There's certainly a lot of TOT that does not get collected, or new hotels. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, we don't need any more new hotels." They're right to a certain extent. If we want to stay in our blue circle, we don't need any of these new revenue sources. But we probably can't do those things outside the circle. It's just a math equation. But you know, if we want to expand our circle, we also have to feed the roots. And so again, it's just a math equation. And so what we really need to do, we can't do everything, but we do probably need to have a roadmap. And I think this has been Councilman Spriggs' point all along, at least the 4 years I've been here, is we need a really good, solid economic strategic plan that says, okay, what are we trying to accomplish in our community, and how much do we need to feed the roots so that we can match those two up and continue to stay stable with our economics. So again, I think it was well stated that staff would never want to bring anything forward to the city council that there wasn't a pathway to get there. But I want to make it also very clear, we do not have the funding in the bank to build the senior citizen center today. There's some other steps we would have to take because right now it's outside of that blue circle. So again, diagrams just help me talk about it. They may or may not help you, but they help me understand. And as soon as we can establish these things outside the circle, then we can start to establish, okay, here's how much we need to feed the roots to make those things happen in our community. So I don't know if that's helpful or if that answers your question, but I know this is something I shared with some of the councilmen.
Well, excuse me if I could. It does, Mr. Hall, it really does answer the questions that I had. I think it lays it out very well for us. We knew when we embarked on this that we didn't have the money to build it today. Like I said earlier, it is a placeholder for the future. With a project design, this is something that we can take forward in grant, to possibly secure grant funding as well. That's hard to do if you don't even have a design. So to me, this is step one in our future.
Mr. Spriggs.
This is a great looking project. There's no question about it, and I really do think the architects have done a fabulous job. My comments weren't intended to, suggest that anything otherwise, other than it was a great design based on the input that you guys got. That was your job, and you did it, and it looks great. B, I am a senior, and I appreciate the seniors in this community and what they contribute to this community. And I am all in favor, let's make no mistake about it, of a new senior center for Imperial Beach and a new senior center within a reasonable time period. That is to say, that we can accomplish within maybe the next, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. Now, as I've said to you before, and I don't want to go over that all again, I've been on this road before with a lot of projects, and it's a painful road. No matter, you take your pain in the beginning when you do the design, you make all the trade-offs, you try to stay within doability within 3, 4, 5 years, or you take the pain later when you have to make the adjustments. But there's always pain in a big project like this, sooner or later. Can't have it all. Nobody can have it all. And it's a fact of life that raising $1 or $2 million is a lot easier than raising $4 or $5 million. And that's a lot easier than raising $7 or $8 million. And that's a lot easier than raising $9 or $10 million. I have been a supporter of all of the improvements, at least during my 6.5 years, that we've seen in this community. The alleys, the streets, the shopping center, the new hotel, the library, Bayshore Village, Bikeway Village, you name it. They've all come before this council, and we have fought hard to get those projects done. This project as designed is indeed, I think my colleagues are right, it's very much in keeping with those other projects, and very much the kind of thing that Imperial Beach would benefit from. The question really is, can it be done from a practical financial standpoint within a reasonable time frame? That's, to me, the question. And I'm not about faith that it's going to fall from heaven. I'm looking at that tree that the city manager presented. I've studied very carefully our revenues and our potential growth in revenues. And I am very interested in seeing that happen. We also have other growing costs, like the sheriff contract, which we have to grow our revenues for, just for that alone. Some ideas were presented here tonight that I think need to be really looked at. One is, this project has sort of taken on a scale of concept larger than the original concept. The original concept was to replace the senior center. The concept now, and I have no objection to this, is that it is a community center. The size of the community room, the flexibility built in, the design, the synergy with the library, the size of it, it really does look like we are in the process of designing a community center. But we haven't really scoped what we want as a community in terms of a community center. This kind of got built through the process of really good people with really good will designing a senior center. And if we're going to do a community center, in keeping with where we're going as a community, in keeping with our general plan amendments and that we're doing almost starting right now, we may need to think through what it is we need more broadly as a community center, and it would be a different kind of a conversation than an expanded or an improved or a new senior center conversation. And it would involve more people in more parts of the community and more thought to how it's going to be funded and making it eligible for certain funding and that sort of thing. We don't have redevelopment anymore. That was a source of some of the projects that you've seen, including even some of the street. Many of the projects, or one or two of the big projects, were port funded, and the others are largely private financing. We're looking here at essentially a publicly financed project at this point by its very nature, serving the public. And the financing for these kinds of projects is different. So I'm in favor of replacing and improving the senior center as soon as possible, within the next few years. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to abstain from supporting the present design because I have not seen how it's going to be done and built within a reasonable time frame that will really benefit our seniors. I'm not going to vote against it, but I can't in good conscience vote for something that I don't see really happening for a decade or more at this scope. I may be wrong, but what if I'm not? How long are seniors supposed to wait in this community for something that's really a significant improvement over what they've got now? Not necessarily a Mercedes-Benz, but a really nice, workable, clean, new, usable, practical senior center. Maybe double the size it is now. Maybe it's $3 or $4 million. I don't know. I'm not against, I'm for that. I'm for a solution for our senior center situation. I'm not for something that is not going to be a solution, even though we would like it to be as it's designed. We all would, including me. I just don't see how we're going to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bragg, I know you had a moment, point of clarification.
I did. This is for the city attorney. If a council member abstains on a vote, how is that recorded? As an abstention? And what's the grounds for an abstention?
There aren't grounds for an abstention, and it's just recorded as an abstention. It's not a disqualification. It's not because of a conflict of interest.
Okay.
So.
It was recorded as 4-0, is that right?
4-0 and then probably 1. Abstain, yep.
Do you need me to explain why I would abstain? Okay. Good.
Thanks everybody for the comment. Again, this is why we have the greatest democracy in the world, and city government is the greatest form of democracy on the planet, and we have a awesome city where we have this kind of dialogue and discussion. They ain't doing that in Russia, that's for sure. But first, an amazing design, and coming from an immigrant family to IB in 1971, I took swimming lessons at the Mar Vista pool. It was like 10 years old back then. All the elementary schools weren't that old. The high school was actually still pretty old. City Hall wasn't that old. I took guitar lessons just in the building behind us. The Palm Avenue lifeguard station wasn't that old. It was filled with dogs from Dempsey Holder. There were a lot of things we took. The old library wasn't that old. And for some reason, when I was a kid, we had this amazing Parks and Rec program. We had all kinds of services. Prop 13 eviscerated that. And then for some reason, and it was because of financial problems, this city, we gave up our tidelands. The port took it over. That helped us out. And then this city and past city councils, many of those council members who hadn't been here that long and maybe didn't grow up here, decided that the people of Imperial Beach didn't deserve the best. The families and working families and kids in our community and seniors didn't deserve the very best. Somehow we were third rate or fourth rate, and that the obligation of the city wasn't to serve the community. The obligation of the city was to serve itself. Our job as public servants is to serve the people who elect us and the people in this community, is to make them safe and to have the highest quality of life possible, whether you're a senior on a fixed income or a working class family over on 13th Street. And you shouldn't have to be a millionaire in today's America to have a millionaire's life. And that means, if it means going into the best senior citizen center on the planet, next to the most awesome library on the planet, and if that means we have to beg and scrape with every elected official in the state of California, in the county of San Diego, and whatever agency we have to do, we'll get it done. Because ultimately, that's our job. I actually raise money for a living and running a nonprofit, so I'm pretty comfortable asking powerful people to pay up, right? Because the fact is, the county of San Diego has $1 billion in the bank. They don't know what to do with it. They're getting our redevelopment dollars. The state of Cal, we live in the wealthiest state in the wealthiest country in the world. So I would hope that we can afford to spend money to give our seniors the very best. Because frankly, Bobby, Mark, and I are going to be just a little bit behind Lori and Ed hanging out there. It'll be the IB Surfers Club. It will be super boring, okay? Thank God Nancy and Sybil and Chris, you're not going to be, well, sorry, you'll be around for a long time. We'll be hanging out with you. Anyway, it's going to retract that. I'm gonna forget, strike that from the record. Anyway, we've got to give our residents an understanding of why we're doing all this private development, why we're building hotels. I'm not gonna tell a working class family with abuelitos in wheelchairs on 13th Street, that, hey, we're doing all this development so we can just make the city hall a lot nicer. No, we're doing it so the abuelitos have a great, amazing senior center they can go to, and more importantly, they can have a family celebration out, and they can take their grandchildren to and say, we're proud to live here, and we're proud to live in a city that understands that its residents, every resident from every background and every income, and from rich or poor, middle class, unemployed, overemployed, has the very best. Because they shouldn't have to live in Rancho Santa Fe and Malibu and Beverly Hills to get that. Every working class city should have the very best. That was the America that we were all raised in. Somehow we forgot that. I guarantee you the federal government's forgot it because they don't invest in infrastructure anymore. But in this city, that's something that I really admire about our staff. That our city manager and our assistant city manager come from cities in Colorado, in Utah, in Florida, where they understood the power of investing back in their infrastructure. Mark, you grew up in Colorado, and I see that in Colorado. Small cities with amazing infrastructure, amazing facilities for their residents. So that's why I ran for mayor, to have that kind of city, to bring that back. This is the first of many projects and many investments we're going to make, because I'm not going to go to bat for a private developer to build some project just so he can get a lot richer. That's to make sure that every penny that we get from that gets reinvested back in the community. So I can't wait to hang out with Chris, Sybil, and Nancy at the senior center, at the surf club, and I fully support this project. But again, I'm going to thank Councilmember Bragg, the subcommittee, and JK Architecture for a really, really thoughtful process. And Mr. Spriggs, thank you so much for your feedback. We get it. We understand it. We know where you're coming from. I promise you, we will not fail. We will succeed, and I look forward to, in a few years, having a great senior center.
And I will work as hard as anybody else to raise the money for this thing.
Great, thank you.
But all I'm saying is, well, what I've said already. I want it to be done within the next few years, and it's a higher hurdle. The seniors deserve it, and so we'll figure out how to get it done.
Great, thank you. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2017-7828, approving regular coastal permit, design review case, site plan review, and categorical exemption pursuant to CEQA guidelines for a new senior community center to replace its existing senior center facilities at 1075 8th Street.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carried by the following votes: ayes, Dedina, Bragg, West, Patton; abstentions, Spriggs.
Great, and when you get an award after your Ocean Award for the Senior Center, we're going to give you an award for the best presentation by any consultant in the city, and we're going to model that for the rest of our consultants. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us. We appreciate it. And now report item 5.1, adoption of resolution number 2017-7834, removing the dog licensing fees from the master fee schedule, and we'll receive a presentation from Dean Roberts, Emergency Services Coordinator.
Mayor and Council, as Dean's coming up, I wanted Dean to come tonight so that we could help residents understand the new licensing procedures that we're going to have. And so just wanted to, it could have been a consent item. We thought it was important for the public to be able to hear.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This item is tied to the transition to the San Diego Humane Society for Animal Care and Control Services here in the city. This removes the dog licensing fees from the city's master fee schedule, which thereby allows the San Diego Humane Society fees to go into effect for Imperial Beach residents. The Humane Society is going to charge the same fees they charge all of their other pet owners, including in the other cities that they provide these services for. By going to this, there's some advantages to the citizens as well. It ensures that the Humane Society has all of the owner and pet information immediately because it's done online. It's in a database that's connected to their site. It gives pet owners the ability to update their own information at any time, easily online. So if they move or even out of state, they can update it. It's a national database. It provides a code on the tag, the actual pet's tag, that anyone that has a smartphone can use to determine who owns the dog and a path to get in contact with them directly. And this can cut down on the number of times that an officer has to actually intervene to get the pet. They can just work together to get the pet to the owner, and also reduce the stress on both the pet and its owner. And actually, in terms of the impact, that's really the action that we're asking for today. And I'll take any questions that you have.
And let me clarify, what we're doing is we're actually removing, right now, the city of Imperial Beach, you come here to purchase a dog license. We're just removing that from our ordinance, and it will be done now through the Humane Society. And could you speak a little bit to how people can actually register and how they can do it from here without having to leave town? Because there's been some concern that you would have to go all the way to Claremont to register your animal.
Right, this is entirely done online, so you could do it from your phone, you could do it from home. If you don't have access to a device, they can come down to the city and go to the finance department, and off to the side they have a computer there that they'll be able to use to do these. They can do it at the library. Anywhere where there's connectivity, they'll be able to provide to access these services.
Real quick, I have 2 dogs, the Great Flyers. I'm sure everybody with a dog got one. And it does really go really well about lost and found, emergency services, and I think it's a good thing what we're doing, moving to Humane Society of San Diego. My question is, so you're talking about a database. So I'm in the database because they mailed it to me, number one, right? So I'm in. They told me my dog's name, both dogs, Salt and Pepper.
Okay.
Salty, excuse me. And it actually tells me when the dog license expires. I mean, I'm in, right? So I'm just wondering, why couldn't they have just put that license in this envelope? Because right now, these 2 papers have been sitting on my table, just like that. And I'm like, okay, I'll get to it. So is there any way we could rectify that? I mean, I'm in the database. I mean, not just for me. I understand. I'm talking for everybody.
Yeah, we can meet with them on that and try to work that out.
I mean, just mail it out. Because you could call them, email them. I know it's a little thing, but if we could simplify it. I mean, it'd be different if I wasn't in the database, but I'm in.
And it's so, to answer, I know that that was considered at one point, and I think that as they were talking about, they weren't sure about the accuracy of all the records immediately, and so they thought, well, if we get feedback on this first round, then that way we'll know that they still have the pet, and
but even if the pet's gone or dead,
like I said, we can definitely talk about that.
Okay, just something to look at.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you, Dina. I just wanted to ask you, how do you think the transition is going from us to the Humane Society, and how did the 4th of July, that I just, from observing on Facebook, there were a lot of animals who, understandably were upset and ran away from home, can't find their way back home. So how is that resolving itself? And because that was one of the things that we were really concerned about, was the transition period. And as far as how, is the public aware of what they're supposed to do now, who they're supposed to call? I know there have been some other issues about code enforcement issues on the beachfront, but specifically, how is the transition going?
It's gone really well. They spent a month prior actually going out in teams with Chula Vista, who was extremely cooperative and helpful, to educate them in some of the troubled areas, some of the things that we deal with the most in the city. We met with them twice, their whole team. They had a team of about 21 people that were involved in making sure that the transition was as smooth as possible. We had minor things with communications, a little bit late on getting some of the notifications out. Some of the websites, even today, are still not quite updated, little things like that, but they respond very quickly when we find them. And then in terms of how they've been interacting with the community, I've already heard back from some of our more vocal residents who have had issues with pets, and they've given a good report card and had good interactions with them, and feel that there's already an improvement. And of course, just having this much more service is having that effect. In terms of what happened on the 4th of July, we did have a number of animals who flew the coop, so to speak. And most of them got reunited through the neighborhood efforts. You know, everybody was looking for them out there, and so they grabbed most of them. We had 6 dogs total that ended up going beyond that to the span of the Humane Society. Of those, that next day, 4 of them were united, and the next day, a 5th one, and I haven't heard on the last one. I haven't followed up, but so far close to 100%.
One last question, Dean. How is the outreach to the community what we expected? Because that was something that we were really, we really pushed them on, was that we wanted during the transition period and then afterwards as well, that the community knew who to contact. So how is that part of it going?
It's going well and getting better and better. They're showing up at our events in force, reaching out to the community while they're out. They've gone out and just spent time on the beach, even with people that didn't bring dogs, that might have dogs, to talk to them about, hey, this is how it works down here, and just, hey, we're the ones taking care of this now. We're the Humane Society. You can let us know about any issues you have. And then everybody's been enhancing the outreach through media, through social media.
Okay. Thank you. That's exactly what we had requested of the Humane Society, was that they become really proactive and be real aggressive about the transition. So I'm really glad to hear that, Dean.
So far, so good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robert. And so I'd like to entertain, what I like about this city council is that, and this city, is we're moving to eliminating a lot of the charges, the nickel and diming, I think you referred to that once, Mr. Patton, on our residents for services that, and making it more efficient. We're learning that by limiting those fees, we can actually encourage more people to participate, and it actually costs us less money. So that's great. I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2017-7834.
So moved.
Please vote. Not yet. Sorry. Hold on.
We are very lucky. One of
Motion carried unanimously.
taking it on herself.
Regular meetings adjourned.
Amazing.